So we're really diving into the deep end today, huh? Like way deep.
Going deep sounds like fun. What are we diving into?
Well, we're talking about the afterlife, but not just the vague afterlife everyone talks about, but like what it actually feels like. What really goes down on the other side, you know?
Yeah, like the nitty-gritty details. What's it really like when the lights go out? We've got some good stuff for this one.
We do. We're lucky enough to have Jurgen Ziewe's work to help guide us today. This guy spent 4 decades exploring the afterlife through out-of-body experiences. And get this, he documented everything.
We're working with some serious first-hand accounts. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I'm talking multiple books, tons of articles, even VR simulations based on what he saw and felt.
Wow, it's like he wanted to bring everyone along with him on his explorations.
Totally. He called himself a multi-dimensional man. And from what I've read in his books, like Multi-Dimensional Man and The 10-Minute Moment, he wasn't kidding around. But one thing that stood out right off the bat was this idea that the afterlife isn't like one size fits all, you know?
Right, right. Like it's not just everyone floating on clouds playing harps, or the opposite, everyone's,
Like,
you know,
exactly. Not everyone goes to the same heaven or hell.
makes sense. I mean, everyone always says life is what you make it. Why not death, too?
Well, that's what Ziewe found. That what we experience after we die is actually a direct reflection of our individual consciousness, our inner world. You know, like, think about it. There are over, 7 billion people on Earth, all living their own unique lives. Why would their deaths or experiences in the afterlife be any different? So following that, if someone were, let's say, completely ruled by fear and anger during their life, that's what they'd be stuck with in the afterlife.
That's what Ziewe is suggesting, yeah, that the afterlife is more of a continuation of our internal state rather than a judgment or a specific place. You kind of just encounter the energy and consciousness you cultivated while you were alive.
Okay, so that's a lot of pressure. It's like we're creating our own personal afterlife every single day through our choices and our thoughts, even the vibes we put out there.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's way more responsibility than I think most people realize.
It really is. And, this whole thing about death being this peaceful slumber, state of rest, that's another misconception Ziewe challenges.
Really? What makes him say that? Did he see something different in his out-of-body experience?
Oh, yeah. He had a pretty intense encounter with his deceased mother during one of his explorations. And she told him straight up, death is simply an extended form of gathering valuable information and experience.
Wow, so it's less about lounging around on clouds and more like school's still in session.
You could say that, yeah. He found that the potential for growth and learning actually expands exponentially after death. He uses the example of his brother-in-law who had a very limited life. But Ziewe found him thriving in the afterlife. He found his purpose and was progressing in ways he couldn't on Earth. It wasn't about punishment or reward. It was just about the continued evolution of consciousness.
So then, if the afterlife isn't some singular place and it's not about resting, what's the terrain like? Because Ziewe really doesn't hold back on the details in his out-of-body experiences.
Oh, he gets very detailed, almost like he's painting a picture. He describes navigating multiple dimensions beyond the physical, each one correlating to different levels of consciousness. Less about physical locations and more about states of being, constantly shifting and evolving based on our awareness and growth.
Different dimensions of consciousness, man. That just makes you think. There was this part in Ziewe's interview you sent over. He talked about running into these huge crowds in the lower astral planes. And the people there, they were just stuck in their old ways, like totally clueless that they were even dead. Honestly, it was kind of creepy.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? He said those lower astral planes, they vibrate at a lower frequency. And they're usually full of people who are still hanging on to their earthly desires. They haven't quite grasped that they're onto something new, so they get trapped in their old loops.
They're like ghosts of their old selves or something.
It's more like they died but didn't fully arrive. You know what I mean? Like that part where Z says our mind, our consciousness, that's what designs our afterlife experience. And when we die, everything in our mind, even our subconscious, becomes our reality. It's not about going to some predetermined place. It's about going to a realm that we created with our own thoughts and beliefs.
Okay, hold on. So it's more than just, trying to be happy and thinking good thoughts so you have a good afterlife. It's about really facing your stuff, dealing with your issues. Self-awareness, that's what prepares us for what comes next, right?
I think so. And we have to align ourselves with the universe's natural laws because, according to Ziewe, they're still running the show in the afterlife, like karma.
Oh, you're talking about that part about suicide bombers. Man, that was intense.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. But what's interesting is that Ziewe didn't see it as judgment from some higher power. He saw those people as experiencing the consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
Cause and effect just on a cosmic scale.
So no divine punishment, just straight up consequences for our actions. That's what shapes things.
Basically, and that's where personal responsibility comes in. Because if we're creating our own afterlife, then every choice matters, Got to live consciously, cultivating love, compassion, all that good stuff.
So it's not about just being a good person, but realizing those qualities have a ripple effect, and not just in this life, right?
Exactly. Every act of kindness, every moment of forgiveness, it shifts the energy, not just now, but in the next life too.
Yeah.
Just like those negative actions can make things difficult in the afterlife, positive actions, especially the ones fueled by love, create a much more harmonious experience.
Which makes me think about Ziri's whole ego death thing. He seemed to believe it was a big part of navigating the afterlife, but the phrase ego death, I don't know, just sounds so harsh.
It does sound kind of scary, right? But Ziewe described it as more of a liberation. He saw the ego, like our sense of self, as a temporary identity, something we create just to get through this human experience.
Kind of like a suit of armor that protects us but weighs us down.
That's a great way to put it. And as we move into those higher dimensions, we start to shed the weight of the physical body, and the ego, with its fears and desires, it starts to dissolve. Ziewe found that this dissolving allowed him to connect to higher states of consciousness and experience a bliss that's just not possible when we're clinging to a limited sense of self.
So less about erasing who we are, more about letting go of the things that keep us separate.
Exactly. He talks about it in the 10-minute moment, and it's beautiful, actually. He says, the bedrock of reality is actually bliss. It's always there. But our ego, with all its chatter and clinging, it blocks us from really feeling it.
Okay. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So we're shedding the ego, tapping into this bliss.
Yeah.
Any other big adjustments we should be aware of as we transition? Ziewe encountered some pretty mind-blowing stuff, right?
Well, this is where his experiences go way beyond any traditional idea of heaven. He talked about realms of pure energy and light, places where communication is telepathic, manifestation is instantaneous, and the limits of space and time as we know them just don't exist.
Okay, now we're talking. This all ties into his super dimensions, right?
Yeah.
Before we go there, how did experiencing these realms change Ziewe, if at all? Did he come back different?
He did. He talked about returning to his physical body with a profound sense of peace. He wasn't afraid of death anymore, just to transition to a broader perspective. He still went through the ups and downs of life, but always had this underlying awareness of interconnectedness of everything.
It's like those experiences gave him a peek behind the curtain, you know?
Yeah.
Like a reminder that even when things are messy here, there's a bigger picture we can't even see.
Yeah. And even though what he experienced might sound unbelievable to some, he stressed that preparing for these realms is all about how we live right now. It's not about earning your way to the super dimensions. It's about living in a way that resonates with that existence.
So again, it's about love, compassion, awareness. It's like we're exercising a muscle or capacity for expanded consciousness, something we can strengthen in life and in preparation for what's next.
Right. His work, his experiences, they're like an invitation to live with a sense of wonder, to work on those qualities, to remember that every moment is shaping not only our present, but the infinite possibilities that come after.
It's humbling, inspiring, and a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
As it should be. What if we all started living each day as if it were the first day of an infinite future, like Ziewe suggests? How would that change how we see things, the choices we make, even how we interact with each other?
Wow. Speaking of big questions, we haven't even touched on reincarnation or Ziewe's experiences in the super dimensions. He described those realms as beyond human comprehension.
That's where it gets really interesting.
All right, the super dimensions. After everything we've talked about, multiple dimensions, ego death, the whole 9 yards, this is where it gets really real, right? What did Ziewe get himself into here?
This is where his explorations go beyond anything we can really imagine. He described these realms as pure consciousness. Imagine a place where all the limitations, space, time, even your sense of self, they just dissolve.
Okay, I have to be honest, even with everything we've learned so far, this is hard to wrap my head around. We went from practical tips on navigating the afterlife to like existence beyond human comprehension.
That's the thing about Ziewe's experience. Even with decades of exploring these realms, he could barely put it into words.
So what did he say? How do you even begin to describe something like that?
He said explaining the super dimensions was like trying to explain quantum physics to a dog. We just don't have the tools to understand it from where we are now.
Okay, so if words fail, what can we take away from this? Was it more of a feeling he had rather than something he could describe?
It wasn't about what he saw, but how he perceived everything. He said everything was connected, every thought, every action, creating this web of existence.
So he was talking about pure unity, right?
Exactly. It's like that tapestry metaphor, but on a much grander scale.
Did these experiences change him, when he came back?
Totally. He said he wasn't afraid of death anymore. It wasn't an ending, just a transition. He still experienced life's ups and downs, but there was this understanding of interconnectedness, a deeper reality.
It's like those super dimensions became his touchstone, reminding him that no matter how chaotic things get here, there's a bigger picture we don't see. Did he talk about if we could reach those super dimensions too?
He emphasized that it's not about earning your way there, it's about cultivating the qualities that resonate with that level of existence.
So it always comes back to love, compassion, awareness. We're not just being good people, we are preparing for a different level of being.
Exactly. Ziewe's work is an invitation. Live with a sense of wonder. Remember that every moment shapes not only your present, but your infinite possibilities.
It's inspiring and a little daunting if you really think about it.
It should be. Ziewe said, what if we treated each day as if it were the first day of an infinite future? How would that change our perspective, our choices, everything?
That's a great question, and I think it's something our listeners can reflect on. This has been a wild ride, from practical afterlife tips to realms beyond human comprehension.
It shows us that reality is far more complex and strange than we think.
Ziewe said he's working on a VR experience to give people a taste of the super dimensions. I don't know about you, but I want to try that.
Me too, but until then, I think we have a lot to think about after this deep dive.
We do. For our listeners, thank you for exploring with us, and until next time, keep asking questions and diving deep into the mysteries around us.